All right. Hi, guys. So today we have Julie Reshe. She is a philosopher and negative psychoanalyst in Ukraine Gypsy origin. She's also the director of the Institute of Psychoanalysis at the Global Center of Advanced Studies. I know you're also a visiting professor at, I can't pronounce that university's name, but I know recently you wrote a book, Negative Psychoanalysis, and I read it, and I have to say it was something that your warning at the beginning was, for those who have lost hope. And it's funny because I didn't really give myself an assessment before I read it, and yeah, it really affected me. Um, I guess my first question is, I notice a lot of people have problems with the terminology of negative and positive. Um, they tend to give this maneuver of like, well, isn't that positive, Julie, and stuff like that. And I guess, do you feel like it would be necessary to change it? I mean, I don't. I mean, personally, I wouldn't see why would you, but
It's like you, thank you for introducing me and for inviting me. And it's like you wrote in your review of the book that I don't care. I don't actually care, and I'm not. There is desire maybe to approach philosophical book from a certain point of view, to find out what is, when you read the book, you're looking for something, and then when you reflect on it, you might look for mistakes, or you might look for good ideas, interesting ideas, or some knowledge that you can take from it, or it's something new that open up for you. Well, maybe the last one is okay, but that's not what this book is about at all. Like, it's not even a book. It's failure in certain way to produce a book, and it's not more than a book, not less than a book. It's just the more like impossibility of writing books, and impossibility of thinking, or the failure of thinking from this standpoint where you're not able, like, it's completely different thing. Even though it has a form of a book, and you probably notice the way, the influence, well, you still can try to intellectualize, is this the word, and find what is good about it, or what is, but it's you're failing kind of to comprehend it in this way. It's from the point, where I got disillusioned in life in general, but precisely in philosophy. What do we do? Because philosophy was all I ever was interested in, and it's the only interesting thing, and the only thing that was my attention. And then the question was experience, I guess, or as I grow older, as I get old and grumpy, just question every time. Almost everything irritates me, and the questions come up. So what? So why are we doing this? And this book is not different. It's not, now I'm saying something, you can't ask so what. It's also so what, but on a completely different level. It's like, it is so what, in itself, developed into a book. The question, what are we doing? What is this? What the hell is going on? And not exploring it, but just staying in the feeling, or the absence of possibility to explore, to go somewhere, to move somewhere else from here. The impossibility of movement, of thought, and of, in general, philosophical thinking.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what your book kind of did to me, honestly. It disillusioned me, but I already had disillusionments. I guess, um, I come from like a religious background, so, and I would hop from religion to religion after I joined the army, and then once I finished, and then I fell into philosophy, and I really loved it, and then I feel like I'm once again hitting that grain of disillusionment again. And I think reading you was just like that final cherry on top because I feel like a lot of philosophers keep talking about like things people can do and so on. And I'm just like, when you talk to a normal person, just like an everyday person, uh, my mother gave me this one comment one time, and it was something similar to "so what?" She said, "That's nice, honey." That it was such a disillusionment because I felt so prepared with my arguments and my reasoning to convince her, and I feel like a lot of philosophers don't like that kind of possibility at the end of like "so what?" or that's nice, but I really don't care. I've met so many people that don't even read philosophy that kind of give me that same look, like, yeah, I just don't care. And then you have to really ask yourself, why are you doing this in the first place? Like, there is something that is pointless, useless. I've gotten to the point where I don't even want to talk to people about philosophy things that I read now because I'm just like, this just you get this kind of that's nice, but I don't care. Um, and so yeah, I think that's what your book kind of sort of pinned it on. So my next question is actually the interview I liked with Ewan McGowan when he started talking about beauty. I noticed that you pushed back a little bit on him because you said that, well, as long as it's not beneficial, it still has a kind of beneficial point. But then he says, well, I think beauty is the only thing that doesn't that can be a benefit that doesn't really it's a benefit itself. It doesn't really have benefits. And I was curious whether you actually agreed because you didn't really pu push further on that point. You kind of just went on, kind of talking with him in the book and also in the interview. But I'm just curious what you think about that concept, um, beauty, and how does that play in your negative psychoanalysis?
I think I didn't push it forward, meaning I didn't take it away from him because I'm not ready to take it away from myself. Like there are certain things that I consider that I care about and that are dear to me. Beauty is one of them, and the care for the other is one of them, or this togetherness, some kind of, or being sincere. And I know that once I push it forward a little bit with my this suicidal mode of thinking, where whatever I'm um, proclaiming, I'm taking it away. If I'll just go there, I will lose it, and that's the end. Including of words, including of so beauty is one of them. Everything that you can, the way McGowan puts it, if you see uselessness, it's just like the other word for nothing. For you like it, you care about it because it's useless. It just and it's dear to me because it's also in this way suicidal. It exists for no reason, so uh, that's what I'm writing in a book too, in relation to not beauty but care for each other, the proximity of togetherness, something on the negative practice itself. Like there are some things that I know they if I go with this thinking father, um, it'll just disappear, and it's complete absence of possibility of any movement after it. So I'm trying not to go there. And beauty is one of those concepts that I'm still holding on to. I'm not letting go, but probably once I'll be strong enough to let it go too. Beauty precisely of in the absence of utility, the absence of any use. Yeah.
Yeah, that was I kind of got that. I kind of got those feelings when when you were talking in some of your interviews. Um, because when I started playing with your thought a little bit further, I discovered things I got scared of about letting go, things I got scared of letting go, and I was like, oh, okay. But I noticed something about what you're doing, at least for me, because like I have like for example, I have a brother that has issues, but it's funny because everybody's hopeful about it. I'm not really, but it's weird because you would think that I would probably stop helping or something like that. But there was questions that people gave you like, does that mean we should stop trying to solve problems in the world and so on? And I know the way you kind of answer it is kind of like, well, I'm not telling you that you should or you shouldn't, but it was that really at the end of the day, there's still the fundamental suffering, the fundamental kind of negativity at the end, that we can't really escape from. At least that's how I understood you. And I think that's how I look at compassion in a kind of way, like, um, where I'm just like, it's like an empty compassion. Like I really know that it can't, nothing's gonna solve this, but I just do it anyways for the, perhaps even the uselessness of it. I don't know. But I look at it like a kind of brutal compassion. At least that's what I call
Yeah,
it.
compassion, plural compassion is another beautiful concept, right? That it's
Yeah.
hard to let go. Precisely because, or care, or compassion is even better because it's not trying to save that
Mhm.
much anyone, not trying to fix anything, just giving up or staying in the mood of giving up, but still doing it, still kind of without without the hope that it will improve something, feeling the pain of existence of the other, without implying that it will necessarily make you better person, no, world better, no, or someone else better. It's just this uselessness if it's done properly, and it's basically the basic of any moral action or any ethics. If you go um, if you go with this comprehension of uselessness of any action, if you doing it for a certain, there is a certain goal of this action, it's not moral. So morality or ethics is also self-subversive. Like you do it for, if you do it for a reason, then you're not doing it. Or if you do something because you want salvation in Christianity, you're not actually doing it. And it's not that later on, there's going to be someone angel who will tell you, well done. No, now you're getting it because you didn't expect it. No, it just doesn't work that way. So actually, no.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like it also teaches you, in a weird way, like how to interact with people uh, that still believe in that kind of like salvation, kind of method and stuff like that. Because even you kind of hinted it with Miguel, and you're like, I don't want to push it that hard. Um, I guess you can see, there's a delicate balance I kind of see you doing in the book too, where it's like, or at least with your work, where it's like, you talk about, we shouldn't cause more suffering in a kind of way either, because then that would be kind of like a positive project, the way you put it. Uh,
Taking control over it, right?
yeah, taking control over it. And I think the irony of it is like, even though I could give up on salvation, I wouldn't be able to stop my mother or my brother from believing in it. And so there is something there that's like, we're both dwelling in that sort of negativity of, that my mother still believes in it and I don't. I can't convince her, but she can't convince me. And so like there is this real, connection going on. Or at least a connection can be made with that. At least on my end. Um, if because I do feel like two positive projects seem to really obfuscate the other. And I think that was the part that I really loved. And you kind of said this with, enjoyment. Um, and you could say we get a kind of enjoyment from trying to convince the other into our projects, into joining us. And I think that's why I like the end of, the so what. But I'm curious if I'm kind of getting the marks on that right.
Yeah, I think when we, especially in the field of philosophy, when we talk to each other, we try to, or any argument, we try to explain something or present our thinking. It's the interesting thought, or it explains something with the new theory, and there's kind of competition going on of who is right. Like it matters, and you can see that you can say that there is a progress, which is not true, from state of being religious or some kind of naivety to being atheistic and switching to philosophy. Therefore, but there's also another stage, and it's not a progress. It's also, so what in relation to philosophy, the whole discourse of philosophy, the field of philosophy, where we talk about, where we compete with our opinions or with how interesting our thought is. Like, it's also, and the point to which you arrive, which is not a progress, again, it's not, it's even more pathetic, or it's same pathetic as the whole the whole thing as the point of the starting of the naive thought. So, and I was trying to maybe to step away from both this feeling of superiority as a philosopher or as a particular someone who has a particular point of view in presenting it, or understand something better, trying to step away from the game of the whose comprehension of reality is better, and just show that that they all are pathetic, and the whole thing of competing with each other is also pathetic within the field of philosophy, as well as philosophy competing with common sense or with religious perspective. Just, so what? That's nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I think that's like the thing that I felt when I read your book a lot. Like, I felt like that's what I was reading when I was grasping. And it really hit at the end when you kind of like negated, like, oh well, if you thought that you could just live life like living dead, and and I was like, well, but that's what you just said, that's what you just said, and then it suddenly hit me that perhaps the negative, that the way you talk about it, seems to be like a real, not something that can just be said in language, but something that's like, it's a sort of genuine uncomfortability, a genuine sort of negativity that, to even speak it would be like you don't really even understand what that actually means, so to speak, because it's like I can imagine some younger people reading the book and be like, yeah, look at me, I'm living dead, like all gloom and doom, and in some ways I would look at them like, yeah, I don't think they get it. I don't think they get it quite yet. That actually the real negativity would be that, for some of them it might even be impossible. They would be constantly failing to actually achieve that, and then the failure of even to convince people of philosophy like yours, because what you're trying to get at is like, this negativity, this pure failure that is very visceral to the subject and society, I would say.
It's also not that there are correct ways of being living dead, unfortunately. Would be
Yeah.
great, if my daughter calls me emo, meaning, which is not cool anymore. It used to be cool, but now it turns out that it's not. But there is something like just role playing, pretending, and it's cool to be the living dead. So it's not that way. It's rather that my point is that we are all living dead, or at least we can, when you are depressed on this negative thinking, which pop psychology claims that depressive thinking is negative. It wants it to be positive and adequate. And that the state that any human being has potentially can fall into, because it's always there. There's some traumatic event might happen and the whole new world will open up to you, how everything is meaningless, how you cannot go on, and how you are living that, how you lost everything, how you're going to lose everything, how nothing makes sense, and how everything is unfair. Like this kind of substance opens up that you want to escape from. And I think that, not me, but the point of depressive realism would be that it's always there, this dark black substance of existence. It just sometimes we asleep in relation to it, like the other way around. The psychology would claim the negative thinking is when you're inadequate, don't understand something, to your thinking is too dark, you need to be fixed. From the opposite perspective of depressive realism, it's just you're asleep, you're disillusioned in relation to how reality of this black substance that that is always there, you can always be awake in relation to it, which we call trauma, and other things that we comprehend as deviation. So and from this perspective, it's not that people are those who are living dead who do it properly, or not, like emos, not genuine. But it's just that people are trying their best, and everyone goes through the worst thing possible for them. It's a tiny bit worse, and they will collapse. It's always on the edge, and they would just disappear. And they every day, every second, they approach the end of their existence, and not only the end of their existence, but the end of everything they have, like the youth or beloved one. Everything is coming to the end every second. It's phenomenal that we are able to forget about it and kind of function in a way. And there is no hierarchy of who is better or who is worse. It's like it's the worst for everyone individually, the worst possible. We just hope that there is someone who is that the other type of human being, and life is unfair because there's something wrong with us. And psychology likes to impose this illusion that you can be fixed. There are other people who are not limited, who are not the result of trauma. And from this perspective, is rather that everyone holds the black substance, and there's nothing else except for this black substance, and everything else is just secondary or unnecessary, or secondary in its nature.
Yeah, I guess my next question is I know there's a lot of different perspectives on the death drive. You kind of go through a couple of them with they always kind of typically like to lump it up with jouissance or pleasure. It seems like your notion of death drive is more towards lumped in with Sabina Spielrein, and then you add Catherine Malibu's concept of destructive plasticity. But I'm actually curious about this. This would be a secondary question, but I remember hearing in one of your videos, you said that actually you were told to not use that concept from Catherine Malibu, and even Aleka said that probably you shouldn't use it either. But they were like, "Yeah, I'm still using it." I was just curious if you were able to come up with another word, or you're like, "Yeah, I don't care," kind of thing. But yeah, I just want more of your understanding of the death drive, because it seems like your notion of death drive. It feels like death drive has changed, but even that change is always like a new death or something like that. Like death gives forms to itself, but it's always dead. So I take that as kind of like the living dead concept of like paradoxically. But yeah, just clarifications, and that's what I'm kind of asking.
Yeah, so I really like it's just because I like it so much, both the death drive and the destructive plasticity, which is another version of it that there's nothing I can do. When I said sorry, using it, it's actually nothing I can do about. I love it because it's not a word, it's not the concept among other concepts, that you can discuss. It's a curse. It's the cursed word, or something that it communicates. It's stupid, the death drive, in a way. The words, if you think about it, if you put it in normal discourse and discuss it as normal, you can say that it's stupid because it's not drive. Drive is some active force, motivation, and it's the opposite of motivation. So it's subverting itself. But the way it functions in Freud, and the way Sabina Spielrein make it function in it's that it's subversive. It's a curse because it testifies a breakdown of psychoanalysis. Like that's, if you go in it, if you stay with it, it's like magical in a bad way. If you stay with it, it means the collapse genuinely stays with it. Those Freud was not able to do it, and I'm not sure it's possible to do it. That's why it's interesting. If you genuinely stay with it, you're not able to, it's a collapse of psychoanalysis as a practice of cure, because it means that if the thing that is the phenomena that death drive describes means that we cannot be cured, neither psychoanalytically, it won't work. It's the break. So it's a break in language and a break in the very practice, and in Freud's life too, partially because well, substantially actually, because he wanted to be psychoanalyst, and his initial, when he was younger, his intention was to save humanity, to be someone great, to all the positive things. And when you encounter, when you truly, it's not that he believed in it, but he ended up after his own personal tragedy in a state when he recognized, when he saw clearly, even though he was trying to deny it, even when conceptualizing the death drive. But that if it genuinely, you try to make it the part of a coherent positive project, it breaks it. And Sabina Spielrein is also amazing, the one who actually introduced the concept and was trying to communicate it to Freud using psychoanalytic language, even though other languages can be used. Her life is also tragic and unfair, and it's very so it's beautiful. We can say that she is the one who brings the concept as a poison to psychoanalysis, but actually this poison psychoanalysis that keeps functioning, but as a break of itself, as a subversion of itself in its impossibility, the hopeless functioning, for nothing, just meaningless. That's the psychoanalysis that I like and that I recognize as negative, even though we can question the word.
Yeah, I think that's what was so funny about reading your book specifically, because I realized, and I kind of laughed at myself. I was like, yeah, I mean, I can't even apply anything. I can't even apply, like, because I used to, I'm always fascinated with connecting, other philosophers, but um, with you specifically, I was like, yeah, I mean, I really struggled because I was like, I think this is the end in terms of like trying to connect actual thought, because what I ended up questioning was my own motive. I said to myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm also writing a book, and I remember my good friend said, nobody, what's interesting about writing a book is that nobody asks you to do it. And it really hit me. And that's when I like started throwing away, like I was like, I don't want titles, I don't want anything. I just want this lump of whatever it is. Because he was right. Nobody asked me to do anything. And I'm not interested in the sort of marketing or anything. Um, but thank you for answering the question on the death drive. Um, there has been some questions on religion for you. Um, and I've been thinking about this question about how would it be possible to incorporate religion if it was possible. But then I started laughing. I said, well, it would just be a God that nobody wants. um, but I started thinking about this concept because Henry Corbin came up with it a little bit, and he called it the pathetic God. And it was a God that, for Corbin, just he felt like he lacked something. He needed beings or other human beings. Um, so I'm curious, even though that what I'm introducing is very like superficial. Um, I'm curious in that sense. Do you think there would be room for something like that, um, theologically, like a kind of? I mean, I wouldn't be advocating a kind of negative theology, but it would just be something kind of different. It would be something more to the core concepts that you've brought up. Of course, that's sort of difficult to navigate, but I'm just curious what you think about that kind of question.
Maybe it would be God that doesn't exist, which is very pathetic. And maybe it's something that is already happening in Christianity. It was the criticism, of the Christians who are actually atheists, who just go to church because they got used to something. So they're atheists, they don't believe in God, or even priests, but they still preach because this is how their life is, or something like that. But I find it precisely this, well, Zizek is similar, right? The true core of Christianity, it's the absence of God. Again, uselessness, useless, beautiful thing. Pray to God that doesn't exist, and pathetic in this way. It would be something interesting, and I really, what interests me in, because of McGovern influence partially in religion, is the rituals, which, especially in his interpretation, as the repetition of luck, or as making space for the luck with a certain regularity. And this is something that establishes society as such. So losing it, and which is precisely useless and meaningless, meaning it's not supposed to have any utility, all of those social rituals. And this is how I even came to like this new spirituality and the self-help that I previously hated. I'm sorry, but if you look at the self-help, it has lots of those rituals that they are self-help because they are not useful. You just do it for yourself, and if you look carefully into it, it's just something useless that you do, like light the candles, right? Meditation, or go for a walk. I would interpret it as an introduction of death practices, like something, the annihilation of self. And it's called even rituals, like daily self-help rituals. But somehow normal people would, normal interpretation would be that it's improves quality of life or something like that. And we can say that it introduces, instead reduces life, and introduces those, the absence of self, the death of self, something suicidal, like nice form of suicide instead of smoking or drinking or drugs. Like better version, social accepted version, but not, and something, the emptiness in life that repeats and makes life tolerable, precisely because it negates life through meditation. What is meditation even? It's just completely pointless, weird, big, pathetic thing that you do. And nonetheless, it's important precisely for this reason. And if you add God to it, it doesn't exist. There would be.
So we wouldn't even be going to say so far as to say like God is dead. We would be saying something like just God doesn't exist. Because to say God was dead would, at least in the normal context for people, would be imply that God used to be alive, used to be more vital force in society and culture and everything. Yeah, I've been thinking about this. Would you view your book, because you talk about this a little bit, because it almost made me feel like what you're trying to do is add a perspective. And I know you're trying to juggle multiple things, at least it feels like for me, where you're attacking positive psychology a little bit. And then you're also saying like, but this also isn't the full end of your project, because it's to say, well, actually, it's not just positive psychology, it's the fact that it leaks into the individual, society, and nature, and everything else. And I really liked your chapter with Alenka, on evolution, about how the fact that we focus on selection so much and we don't pay attention to variability. um, I really like that, because I keep coming across these kind of like pressing moments where everybody wants to have some type of order, some type of hierarchical structure, because fundamentally it makes them uncomfortable to not have some type of ordering of thought, some type of categorization. And I think that's why I started hinting at when I was reading your book that there is something deeply uncomfortable about being with this negativity. And so my next question is, I've had experiences where, I get depressed or something like that, but I'm curious how it gets handled in terms of like when people want to help you and people want to cheer you up. Um, how is that sort of, I mean, I know the futility of my question already, but like, how is that sort of navigated? Because uh, I think it's very hard to I'm using words like think and everything. But I think you get my question. How is that navigated, when somebody is going through that unbearable negativity and you see people that want to pull and either, run away from them, because I've noticed a couple of reactions is typically they want to avoid them or they want to cheer them up because their negativity is so unbearable that they have to help them up. And I'm just saying, like, how is that? I'm assuming you probably would say, like, just do nothing. I don't know, but I'm curious about this.
I think that the way this cheering up works, if person is truly depressed, and meaning from perspective of depressive realism, this whole new world, not new, but actually old world of darkness opens up this perspective, something you're unable or traumatized you're unable to unsee it. And you can be cheer up. There are lots of memes how just someone is telling you to cheer up, and that's how it works. I didn't think of that before, But I think it actually works, but as a double illusion. If someone will tell you to cheer up, it well, the motive behind it might be because it's just hard to witness you suffering, because if they truly understand that they will not categorize you as a sick person who needs healing, which is also denial. They truly understand, meaning they have to see the negativity, the black heart of existence themselves, and it's like two depressed people. So but it works like a double illusion or something, double dysfunctioning. But I think that person who, when the other is trying to cheer you up and you're depressed, you just try to pretend that you're better, so they won't get, to protect them. And this is how it works, and this is how we live it. Maybe it's enough, but and maybe the person who tries to cheer up, they also know that's they escaping from something. It's not necessary of knowing, of not necessarily the opposite of knowing. It can be both, because you try to cheer up because you like get it, and this just double pretending works more or less. We pretend to that we are okay, another person also pretends to when trying to cheer us up. We both know, but somehow it works in this direction.
It's funny because I'm taking a sociology class right now called The Pursuit of Happiness. And I'm always refraining from any comments that I want to say because I know I would just make the room extremely depressed. Um, but yeah, you're right. It is a kind of pretending. And it's funny that most people don't look at because remember, they would say something like, oh, if you pretend to smile, then you actually become happy. But I just think I just think the way you bring that up just kind of proves how easy we can sort of mechanicize. I can't even talk. We can sort of do a mechanical movement to go into an illusion. Um, and it's so funny because I'm imagining that people don't even consider how acting would be, how good we are at illusions, and pretending. So but you're right. What you said was something I ended up doing because I saw like how miserable they felt around me. So they're like, "Do you feel better?" yeah, I feel a little better. Then the next day I'd say I feel a little bit better, a little bit more better, um, because they find it unbearable for them. But I guess because I know we're getting close, possibly. Um, what you spoke of some values that you still hold on to. I know you spoke of beauty. Um, and this is something that I'm really curious because, this is something that I probably wouldn't be able to necessarily read in the book. Um, what are the other values that possibly you still kind of hold on to, if it's not too personal?
Well, the compassion, as you mentioned, and something to do with care, which I see them, and rituals, as I mentioned, and I see all of them as a part of what I call negative practice,
Hmm.
which is a self-subversive project. It's like I see it as a next stage of failure of psychoanalysis. Well, I take Freudian late psychoanalysis, which is functioning as a failure. And I see how if we genuinely preserve psychoanalysis as a failure, recognize it, what this negative practice, not the positive aimed at healing or cure or improvement, or not a positive project, but actually staying negative. And here I have all sorts of illusion what it entails, like genuine connectivity between people, which is absurd at its core, because it's also what connects us is rapture, impossibility of relationship, like all the philosophical types of thinking that just game of thought. But it's interesting, maybe as a project that I recognize that is doomed to failure and still functioning. So gradually, probably, it's like, well, maybe I'm trying to prepare myself, for the failure, and it's still positivity in this, not maybe, but actually. But at least this is what I'm able to do. I'm not able anymore to do anything else, not able to even talk to people through if outside of this perspective. I can pretend, can perfectly, I think, I hope people won't notice, be functioning human and share some common comprehension of the world. I hope it can be unnoticed, but genuinely, I wouldn't be alive, to be honest, if it's only this is left, only this mode of function. And this is the mode that I'm trying to, of the negative practice, talking to people, or even writing this kind of book, which is also talking. The self-subversive mode, the mode of so what, is the only one that I'm able to be with and to relate through it. There's nothing else left of me, except for that. And maybe there is nothing actually there, well, for me, but for anyone except for this. And only through this we can genuinely connect. And it's terrifying at the same time. But you mentioned depression, and it's also anxiety and existential Heideggerian maybe sense, this primordial, well, Lacanian, primordial anxious feeling when you touch the core of existence. And but for Heidegger, it was the opposite of connectivity with others, with compassion and stuff. It's when you're alone, you feel that you're separated from the other. And I think this compassion, it's also interrelational. It is, the anxiety is interrelational. It's in compassion, in the link between us and the other, because we don't exist separately. It's not only at the core of us, when we touch the core, it's also at the core of relationship with others, something that constitutes maybe a relationship. And touching the core of the other is also through your anxiety. And this thing is the basis of negative practice, the way I see it. And just because I refuse to do anything else in my life, except for, I can pretend, pretending is all right, but this is what I would agree, as long as they function. It's like committing suicide, but the creatively with others. And the book is also suicide. It's not actually that it's suicidal, but in a conventional sense, but it's a suicide of me as a philosopher of thought as such. It's like staying in the, not escaping it, not trying to even to giving up, just operating within this, because suicide is also a self-subversive word. It's what we mean, kind of desire to end everything because we fed up. You can't do it because it's positive project, you improve in it, paradoxically. So
Yeah,
it is genuine suicide that I'm committing, unlike those other types of. I would claim that this is suicide, and the actual suicide is not suicidal enough.
yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think like you wrote this article on forgiveness and love, and forgiveness and sacrifice, I think, or actually forgiveness and love. But for me, those are like the values that I still hold on to. And I did like the way you explained that forgiveness is kind of like a dying thing, because I think it's funny because when you talk to people, everyday people, about forgiveness, they're like, "Why would I forgive?" Like, there's no good reason for why I would do this. And sometimes I laugh and I have to say, like, yeah, precisely so. Because there is no good reason. Um, and yeah, so you said that you said you're working on the next book and it's going to be focusing more on care. Is that what I heard correctly?
No, well,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
maybe I'm working on the book about love and death this time, but it's edited volume, so I'm just writing a chapter, and
Okay.
I don't actually want to mm, have troubles forcing myself to participate in academic, um, even though Palgrave was amazing, and
Yeah.
but it's just something about the very format of academic book publishing that is not because it's really really hard to write a book and get it published, but also for the reason that it's well, in general philosophy, the way it functions only within academia, and what we mean with when we publish a book, something you can put in your CV and no one would read it, or if they will read it, they wouldn't actually read it. Like it's lost in this type of functioning. So I think right now I'm more interested in other ways, but maybe you don't know how the life will, will end up.
No, no, you're right. You're right. Um, I've noticed that I've noticed that with myself actually. It was actually when I finished your book, I actually struggled to read anything or write anything after for a couple of days. I didn't know, and I don't want you to make you feel like that you're so responsible for that, because I do think that actually some of your writing is something that is already deeply ingrained in me. Um, and I think that's what a lot of people maybe forget or mistake, is that when they read certain philosophers, it's not this abstract philosopher, is that I feel like there's something that a part of me that was already there in the writing that I sort of just kind of discovered when you finish writing it. Um, and I think I was afraid to sort of acknowledge that it was there. And I think that's why I lost my appetite for anything for a couple of days. Um, but I don't want because I think I remember hearing you saying something like you understand like your responsibility or something like that. But I was like, I don't want you to feel responsible for this, but perhaps I can't stop you either.
I
um,
won't. Well, it's not that necessary. It has to change the, I don't know, everyday routine, even academic routine. It's just that you more explicitly recognize what you already know, how idiotic it is, the whole thing, what
yeah,
we do, uh, especially with competing with each other. promoting this book too. Look what I did. Read it.
Yeah, that's actually what I told one of my friends. I said, I don't want to promote this book actually, but if you want to promote it, I won't stop you. I don't want to do it. I don't care. But I see that we're coming on the end. I guess the last question is, you did say something about love. You said love was not something, I forgot how you phrased it in one article, but you said love is not like you don't have to do anything or something, like it's already at the core. I think the interconnectivity or something like that. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but um, I think you said like love doesn't have to be a positive project because it's already, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but perhaps you get what I'm getting at with that.
Maybe, yeah, but what I'm trying to show is that love, it has this death drive and negativity at the core. It's not
Yeah.
the, it is connectivity with each other,
Mhm.
but it's also the impossibility of the connectivity with each other. So it's rupture. And if it might look like it implies the Christian idea of primordial connectedness with each other or something like that, we lost some kind of state of harmony and being this togetherness. But from my point of view, but it would rather imply that it's, let's take another point of view, that it was never there, that, and it exists in as never existed. It's the tragedy of it. It's not that we able to restore it in the future and that we lost it in the past, but what we genuinely maybe feel like it was lost, and this loss of something that never existed constitutes us. Just showing that love hurts and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yes. 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 I think we can end there. I like ending there actually.
Thank you, Javier.
Thank you for being here, Julie.